Welcome to Overflow, the podcast, formerly the In This Together podcast, still hosted by Maia, me, now joined by Blakely.
We're inviting you into real, honest conversations with guests like Chance and Isla
And friends, all about life, faith,
health, relationships, and more. It's not about having it all together.
It's about letting God lead. By His grace,
Not ours, our cups overflow, even in the wild and barren places, just like Psalm 23 promises.
So grab your laundry basket, start your walk, or just take a breather.
We're so glad you're here.
Hello and welcome back to Overflow the podcast. I am one of your hosts, Blakely.
And I'm one of your other hosts, Maia.
And we are just so happy that you're here today. We color coordinated. These are our colors.
I didn't even think about that. That's so true.
Maia yellow and Blakely blue.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I did not even think about that.
I know.
You're right.
So this is a very extra special episode.
Extra special.
Because our outfits are really just bringing out our inner selves. You know what I mean?
So be prepared.
Maya is the sun and I am the ocean blue.
So you might not know what you're going to get.
We're just kidding. Today we're so excited for our discussion because it is going to be all about abiding in God in different seasons. And
So
we're
good.
whipping out the seasons, y'all. We are talking about winter, spring, summer, fall.
Yes.
And you might be thinking, what the heck? I'm turning this off. Stay with us, please.
Yes.
No, it's going to be so good. Maya and I, a few months ago, maybe back in...
I think it was March.
Yeah.
Because I was in West Palm.
Yeah, it was March. We both, it was kind of crazy. I had written a devotional for something all about springtime and I sent it to Maya to edit it. And she was like, wait, why are you sending this to me? And I was like, I just need you to edit it. Did I do something wrong? And she's like, no, I literally was thinking about this exact topic this morning. And I just feel like it's been so on my heart just about how God takes us through different seasons, and specifically at the time we were talking about coming out of a winter season into spring and like a plant seeing the full bloom of just what is going on under the surface through the winter and getting to spring and just enjoying just the bloom of what's happening in your life. And so just as the months have gone on, we've realized so much just how different abiding in God is depending on the season of your life. So whether you're in a really hard season or you're in a really amazing season or you're in a season of a lot of change, you're in a season of a lot of blooming, pursuing and abiding in God does look different in each of those seasons. And so we kind of had this aha moment of, oh my gosh, I feel like our relationships with God could be so much different and maybe a bit more flourishing if we understood that following God in each of those seasons does look different.
Yeah.
And therefore we need to implement different things in each season.
Yeah.
So this conversation has been long awaited.
Yes.
And it's something that we wanted to record honestly a few months ago, but we just feel like God just wasn't giving us the green light to do it. And today's the day.
Yeah, today is the day.
We're so excited.
Yes, I know. I'm so excited too about this topic because I feel like one, I've really, as I've been, just getting older and continuing to walk with the Lord, I'm realizing how there are so many different seasons. And it's not just that I'm realizing this, I'm also realizing that it's biblical. Like in Ecclesiastes 3:1, it says that there is a season for everything. And then it goes on to say all of these different seasons. There's a time to mourn, there's a time to dance, there's a time to celebrate. There is a time for all these different things. And I just have found so much comfort in that in my own walk with God of like, okay, there is like a season, like a season has an end, you know, like that just because I'm walking through a really difficult season. I walked through like a really difficult winter season recently, and you'll kind of understand a little bit more about what I mean by that. But whenever I was going through that, just reminding myself of this verse of like, there is a season for everything and there's a time for everything under the heavens. And it's basically just talking about how, there is this time for it. And it gave me so much comfort of there is a time for this. And not only is there a time for this, but that it's not going to last forever. And I think that some of you maybe are in a season where you need to remind yourself of that, of, okay, this is not going to last forever. And maybe that kind of makes you excited because you're like, man, this has been so hard. I've been in the winter season. Or it's because you're like, oh my gosh, this has been, you're a little sad and you're like, man, this season has been amazing. I don't want this to end. So how can I just enjoy every minute? And how can I actually look forward to even a waiting season or a winter season that we're going to be talking about here in a little bit, and kind of where all of this, and kind of like just bringing it into like full circle into this metaphor. It's so beautiful how the Bible works. But if we look in John 15:4, Jesus is talking, and he's talking about how he's talking about abiding in him. And so if we go ahead and we look at, I'm going to go to John 15:4. Abide in me, and I will abide in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine, and you cannot be fruitful unless you abide in me. And what's so interesting is as plants are going through these seasons, they are able to fruit, they have seed, different seasons they're going through have different purposes. And there's, for us, I think really realizing that like, okay, we are meant to abide in the Lord in all of these different seasons, in the waiting season, in the winter season, in the spring, in the summer. And there's beautiful fruit that can be produced from that. And that fruit, it goes on to say, is the fruit of joy and peace and love. And so really we're kind of just coming into this topic of, I think that obviously when you're doing a podcast like this, there's so many different people who are listening right now. And I want to just ask you, like, what season are you in? But two, we hope that this encourages you that you can abide in the Lord in every single season. And that is, it's not going to be, necessarily the season that gives you the fruit. It's not going to be, spring, or it's not going to be summer. No. It's the fact that you are abiding in God throughout these seasons, and he is going to be the one to produce the fruit. Like, that is the main deal. And so what we're going to be talking about isn't necessarily how this season brings these things, but how abiding in God in this season will bring this peace, this joy, this love. And so how can we abide in God in these different seasons? Sometimes when it's easy and sometimes when it's hard. And this podcast is kind of like a little bit of an overview. We're kind of thinking about going into like a lot more depth, and you'll kind of see this in these different seasons because there's so much we could talk about with each one. So if you want that, message us so we kind of see if it's actually like a desire. But yeah, I'm excited to just kind of have this conversation today. And that's where, just so you have some like biblical context of like where it's rooted in. And abiding, in my version, it actually says remain in me rather than abide in me. And so abiding is this aspect of being with God, of remaining in him and being with him and doing things with him, and actually like being one almost. So I think realizing that, if you're like, what does that word even mean? What do I abide in this seasons? It's like, how do I stay in close relationship with God throughout these different seasons?
Yeah.
How do I remain with God, in these different seasons? And so that's a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. So I think Blakely, if you have anything you want to add, you're more than welcome to, and then we'll get started on the seasons.
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, this is just a conversation that Maya and I both have just really walked through, especially this last year, a lot with work. We've just been through so many different seasons of, extreme joy and seeing God do all this stuff with work. And then we've been in complete seasons of change with work where like, what is happening? And then seasons where we're like, I don't enjoy doing this. And so this is just really the byproduct. I mean, in so many ways apart from work as well. But this is just a conversation that we've really walked through. We really think that so many of us are wanting a deeper relationship with God, but we're not understanding that in each season, it really does look different, but in a simple way, it's the same, because no matter the season, we are called to abide in God and follow him.
And like the practicals of that, like just like somebody who's farming something, or like if you're cultivating and you're farming wheat, there's different things that you do in each season in order to, stay and to be able to grow and abide. And so I think for us, it's like there's different things that we could be doing, kind of like, I would say the basis is always like reading the word, obviously. If we just talk about like what's basic, like reading the word, praying, but that, and being like obviously in community. But this kind of goes into a deeper level of like, okay, well, whenever we're in these seasons, like these are our tendencies and these are lies we tend to do, or things we kind of happen to kind of always kind of tend to. And now we're going to kind of like just rip those apart and be like, okay, how can we continue to abide and grow? How can we continue to be in the word, dependent on him in each season? So I love that.
Good. That's so good. Yeah. So that leads us to our first season, winter, which obviously most of you listening can probably have an assumption of what this season is.
Yeah.
It's a harder season of life. It's seasons of, when you think about a plant in winter, you're not looking outside seeing a ton of colors. You're seeing a lot of dead trees, dead plants, a lot of gross grass. Like it's just visually not the most beautiful season. But as most of us know, what's happening below the surface is so beyond what our eyes can see. And so although winter is a harder season for us in the sense of that's usually the season where, you're struggling with something really tough. You are in a waiting season. You're like, where is God? I feel so unseen by God. It's just a harder season of life. And we have found that in that season, it can be really hard to follow God because maybe you just really don't feel seen by God. And you're like, what's the point of this relationship? I've been praying for this one thing for 2 years now. And I feel like if God loved me, then he would, come through for this prayer. Or I would just feel more seen by him, and I don't. And so I think in the winter season, a lot of us give up. A lot of us feel discouraged and despaired, and we just experience really extreme pain and loss and grief. And what are some, I know that you've walked through this season in a lot of ways just throughout your life. And I know that you've also come to the other side and gotten to the springtime. So what are your kind of initial?
Yeah, so good. Makes me just tear up thinking about it, because winter seasons, just to take a moment, they're hard.
Yeah.
Like when you're going through something, and I think I love how you put the analogy of, you look outside and it just, everything looks lifeless. Like your life almost feels lifeless, You're like, I don't see, what's going on. I don't see the growth. I don't see, even though it's happening and it's under the surface and we don't see it, it's one of those really big faith building seasons where it's like my circumstances are not showing this right now, and I just think of so many different times in my life that I've experienced that, and I'm thinking to one kind of right now, and just like one that I've walked through recently. And I think that one of the biggest lies that we think during this season is just what you said, and that's what honestly made me tear up, is that I'm not, like, God wasn't listening to me. Like, no. Like, I think about my most recent waiting season, and I'm like, God, where are you? Like, I'm like, no, like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like, this is an accident. Like whatever, all the things that are going on right now, this should not be happening. I know you're a good God, but my circumstances just do not feel like that right now. And you kind of feel like you've almost been forgotten by God. You feel like, okay, I know that you're there, and I know that you're in heaven, and I know it says you listen to my prayers, but I just really don't feel like it right now. And I think to that, and I think about the story of Martha and Mary when their brother Lazarus passes away. And there's this one part that I was reading actually this morning that really stuck out to me. And I had wrote this, and this is my old Bible, and I had pointed this out in my old Bible. Let's see where it is. And it says, although he loved them, he stayed where he was. And it was talking about Jesus, and their brother, Mary and Martha's brother, Lazarus, was about to pass away. And they were like, we need Jesus. This is when Jesus is walking on earth. And they were like, we need somebody to go get him, because he can heal. I want Jesus to come, because this season is really stinking. This winter, this waiting, this dormancy is really just not fun right now. Like, I need you, Jesus. And so they went, and somebody went out to go get Jesus, as Jesus is performing miracles. He's doing these things. And it says right here, it says, although he loved them, he stayed where he was. And that feeling of, although he loved them, he stayed where he was. And I think the biggest lie that we want to think of is that Jesus isn't there, and that he doesn't know what he's doing. Like, the enemy starts to, in this waiting season, starts to make us believe like God doesn't know what he's doing. Like, if he was a good God, would he really be making you do this? And what's so cool about this is it says that although he loved them, he stayed where he was. Although he loves us, he keeps us where we are sometimes. Although he loves us, he keeps us where we are in this waiting, in this dormant, in this season that just kind of stinks, or this circumstance. And what's so beautiful is it's because the enemy will try to tell us it's because, okay, like, he doesn't know what's best for you, and he just doesn't care. But it's actually because he loves us, and he knows so much so what is good for us and what we need in our own hearts. And then after this, and so then 2 days go by, Lazarus passes away, and Mary and Martha are like, we wish that you were here. Like, our brother Lazarus has passed away. Jesus already knew this. He didn't even see Lazarus, and he was miles and miles and miles away. And he didn't even see Lazarus, and he had told the disciples, like, he's passed away. Like, he had already told them, like, he knew this. And so he gets there and he talks to Mary and Martha, and then he raises Lazarus from the dead. Literally raises Lazarus from the dead. And so many people were around, and they were actually there because they were consoling Martha and Mary.
So crazy.
And so these people that were consoling someone, this is a really cool point. These people that were consoling Martha and Mary, because of their empathy and because of their love, they were able to witness a miracle.
Wow.
And so I want to encourage you to invite people in, because they'll be able to witness a miracle.
Wow.
And in that waiting season, what he has done for Mary and Martha is he showed, I am Jesus. Like, I can perform miracles. Like, I am here. I know best. And in that moment, he knew that he needed to strengthen Mary and Martha's faith. He knew that they didn't really realize that he was God of the universe. Like, they knew he was Jesus, and that was awesome, but they didn't realize, like, no, he is the God of the universe.
Yeah.
And I think about myself, and I think about my waiting season, and I think that as much as I, like, kind of wish it away and wanted it to not be there, Jesus knew. He stayed where he was because he knew that I needed to build a faith that was dependent on him. Whenever I didn't see anything, whenever the circumstances weren't there. He knew that I needed to build my faith in the promises of who he was and believe these stories, even though I wasn't seeing healing for the people in my own life that I wanted to see. And he was using this waiting period as a time to just build what he knew he needed to build. And so long story short,
So good.
I share that because in the waiting season, I think the biggest lie that we think is that this is just by accident, that God doesn't love us. And I share this story to show that he loves us so much, and he knows more than anything what we need. I needed that waiting season to now be able to walk into spring and to walk into summer and to walk into the things that God's called me to be, and be like, no matter my circumstances, God, I am dependent on you. I know you perform miracles. So anyways, that's kind of my little tangent, but
I have to go back and listen to that one.
but I just really believe that there is so much beauty in the seasons that we think are really lifeless, because if that is where we really are not following God because of everything looks beautiful, we're following him because of who he is. And that's the most beautiful thing that we can do. So
I think sometimes we forget that faith in God is, the definition of faith is belief in something that you cannot see. And we become face to face with the reality of that definition in the winter season the most, I think.
So good.
We are so, myself being number one in this, emotionally driven as people. And my relationship with God is way too often correlated with my emotional desires. And emotions are such a gift from God. But I think when we're in a winter season, I just look back on, in college, I went through like a really, really dark season with anxiety, and specifically like claustrophobic anxiety. It was super strange. And I was afraid to go to class. I was afraid to go to dinner, like really got to a place where I did not even recognize myself. And at the time, it was so crazy because I was so close with God. It was probably the closest I had been to God. I had just gotten off of a breakup and just was clinging to God so much. And it was one of those seasons where, just like you were saying, it was like, God, where are you? I am calling upon you. I am reaching, like, I need you to live my life every single day. And God just felt so far and so distant. And I would read the Bible verses and nothing would happen. And it was just one of those things that in the moment I couldn't see what was happening. I love the quote. It's like, day by day, nothing's changing. But then you look back and everything's changed. And I think what happens in the winter season is there's a deep, deep growth happening below the surface. We can't see what's happening below the dirt. There's a huge growth that's happening in a plant that one day, all of a sudden, we just see it. It's like the flower blooms and it grows, and we get to see all that God did when we felt like nothing was happening. And so I just encourage you guys to just keep pressing, and this is for us too, like keep pressing when it's hard and when you don't see change, and when your expectation for what God should be doing is different than what he is doing. Keep going. Who are we to say that we know more than what God does? And so yeah, I think that would be one of my tips for the winter season, is just keep going and keep pressing, and really be aware of just how much your emotions are at play. And be reminded that faith is oftentimes so separate from your emotional desires.
100%.
That leads me to my second point, which will end up leading us to springtime. But understanding, I think one of the biggest game changer things I've realized in my faith journey is understanding that two things can be true at once. I had one of my best friends in college. She would always say, and she walked through really, really tough stuff throughout our time at Pepperdine, and she'd always say, you know, Blakely, honestly, I just have to keep telling myself two things can be true at once. I can be going through the worst, most difficult seasons of my entire life, but I can still find joy in other things in my life, whether that's a relationship, whether that's you know, what's happening in school or what's happening in work or your relationship with God. Understanding that you can be going through something insanely hard, but also still finding glimpses of joy. Maybe not wildfires of joy, but glimpses of joy, just in the people around you and in your relationship with God.
Yeah, that's so good. And something that I'm thinking about too, of like how to like practically do this, you know, and I think about this with like Mary and Martha and like what God was teaching them and what God taught me in my waiting season. And a really big practical that I've learned, and even as I'm in like somewhat of a waiting season right now and like a little bit of a winter season in another part of my life, I have been really storing the promises of God in my heart. Like, what does that mean? Like, to have that promise of that God loves me, he knows, he has plans, Jeremiah 29:11, like he has plans to prosper me and to give me for hope and a future. Like believing that is the kind of God that I follow, and like actually storing those in my heart, like that helps me to abide in him. And to like what you said, when I'm going through these seasons, it's like I have this peace and this joy because I'm like, I know that he has plans to prosper me and to give me a hope and to give me a future. Like it has been so, it's not Maia, it's the Lord who just like, as you're storing these promises in your hearts, like he really does give you that peace and that joy. So that's like a practical tip to be able to do everything that you just said too.
So good.
And so we could spend a lot of time in this winter season, that dormancy season, whether it's waiting, whether it's just a difficult circumstance, whatever it is. But we are going to now change a little bit into spring. That'll be kind of given some abiding tips there, and into this spring season, because that's the beautiful thing about what Ecclesiastes 3:11 or 3:1 talks about, is that there is a season for everything, and that the seasons are changing, and there's a season of spring. And the season of spring, if we just think about what it looks like for plants and whatnot, is that's when we start to see blooms. You know, that's where when we look outside, oh my gosh, like there's a flower on that tree. That tree actually is alive, and I did not realize that tree was alive. And so we start seeing these blooms, and maybe in our own life, it's like, oh my gosh, like the toil that I have been putting in, the work that I have been putting in the winter of studying my absolute butt off, is actually, I'm seeing the fruit of it, and I was just able to help somebody. And you know, you're seeing kind of more so just the blossoms and the just blooms around you, and it kind of is one of those seasons where you're like, okay, thank you, Lord. And so I'd love to hear about how do you abide kind of in this spring season. And a lot of people are probably thinking like, oh, that sounds really easy to abide in. like let's go there, let's get there. But I would love to hear your tips on kind of abiding in the spring.
I think something about the springtime is it really is a season for celebration of just what God has taken you through, where you've come from. It's like the quote I said earlier, like it's your time to look back and reflect on all that God has done and the point that he's gotten you from, of point A to point B. And in Song of Psalms, I'm gonna pull up my Bible, it talks about chapter 2, just how the winter is gone and just our rightful response to the winter being gone, because I think a lot of times we can almost feel like we can't celebrate, and it can be this weird in between of, oh whoa, I'm like suddenly out of this really hard season and I see life again, and I see flowers blooming, and am I allowed to celebrate? Like our response to it, for me at least, can sometimes be a bit awkward of like, how do I now respond?
I'm
What is
so
my
glad you're saying this.
What is my response? And chapter 2 verse 11 says, "See, the winter is past, the rains are over and gone. Flowers appear on the earth. The season of singing has come. The cooing of doves is heard in our land." And I loved that because it just is such a sweet reminder that God is, when I read that, I feel so encouraged when it talks about the cooing of the doves is heard in the land. Mm-hmm. We are encouraged to praise God and thank him for all that he's done. And I think something that is so huge for me in a season of spring is just gratitude and really sitting and just basking in the gift that God has bestowed upon me in that season. Even if the gift isn't this, like, you know, if you're studying to get into a school and you don't get into it, it doesn't necessarily mean that gifts in the springtime is like a tangible thing. It more so could be that God has brought you out of a season of deep, deep, deep grief and you are finally seeing the light of day again. And it can be, you know, you're finally seeing that little shimmer of light, and it's something to rejoice in. And it doesn't necessarily mean that our circumstances are wiped clean. It more so means that God is getting you to a place of just once again seeing just the joy of life around you. And I love that verse so much because it just encourages me in that season to really just sit and thank God. And for me, practically, that is journaling, and I encourage everyone to do that on a daily basis. But I think in those seasons, it's so important to really write down what God has taken you from, and even just like the rawness of those emotions into what he has taken you into in a season of springtime.
So good. And as you are saying this, I know, because of I love that you bring all this up, like kind of like the awkwardness and all these different things, because I think about in my own brain, and this is such just like a pattern that I need to break. But I really believe there's a lot of people out here who feel the same way. As soon as like you see the glimmer at the end of the tunnel, maybe you've just been walking through like a lot of just like heaviness, and you see like that glimmer at the end of the tunnel, and you see the blooms, you're almost like, okay, that's pretty, but like I almost like don't want to celebrate it.
Yes.
And I don't want to like feel so thankful for it, because you're like, I feel like, what if it gets ripped away? And I have been, if I'm so honest, that is something that I have been walking through of almost like this, okay, I don't want to like enjoy this right now, because like what if it all goes? Like it's this, you're almost rewiring, and you're like preparing yourself. And what I've learned is that comes from fear.
Yes.
That is out of fear. And whenever I'm thinking those things, I'm allowing the enemy in and trying to like just convince me. And what the reality is that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of peace and a spirit of truth and life. And so what I've realized in that moment is, yes, I don't know how long this glimmer is going to last. You know, I don't know if it's going to go full into summer. You know, sometimes we see the spring and then we go back to a different, you know, it doesn't always happen like chronologically where we can see this, you know, like how beautiful it is to think about it right now, like we are. But what I've really, really realized is I like have no idea what God's plan is. One, I trust him so much, and I am going to just enjoy what I have right now until it's gone. And if it's gone, it's gone. But I don't want to waste this summer. I don't want to wait, or this summer. I don't want to waste this spring. I don't want to waste this bloom on just letting fear win. And I think so many of us are afraid to be grateful in this season because we're letting fear win. And I just think that that's something that I know in my own heart I do. And I know it comes from from fear. And at the root of it, it comes from me not trusting that God really is as good, and that and kind of being afraid that he's going to like take things away from me and all these different things, and realizing, no, he loves me. You know, he's giving me this right now for me to celebrate and enjoy, and I'm going to celebrate and I'm going to enjoy it as long as I possibly can. And so that's just been something that I've had to like make the conscious decision of. And I would say that's a big abiding like just tip for my own self is, again, going back to like the promises of God. But just like you said, I really could not agree on gratitude more during that time.
That's so crazy you bring that up, because we didn't even go over that point necessarily before this. And I started counseling a few weeks ago, and one of the big things I've been walking through with my counselor is I have a really, really hard time accepting blessing from God. And I just have a hard time holding the blessing because I'm so afraid to hold tightly in fear that it'll just be gone. And like, for instance, with Lawson coming into my life and having such a sweet relationship with him, it's been hard to just fully embrace the gift that he is, because I'm like, oh gosh, God, like, I don't want to hold this too tightly. And I think sometimes in life we aren't supposed to hold things too tightly, but it's been hard at times for me with him of like, I don't want to enjoy this gift too much to where, you know, one day it could just be gone. And it's such I think we don't realize how toxic that way of thinking is, because like you said, what's at the root of that is a misunderstanding of God's love for us, that we don't deserve blessing from him, that we don't deserve, you know, XYZ. And that's just not how God operates. Yeah. He's a God of love and
grace. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so my counselor has just challenged me, just like you said, to have verses I go back to when those lies come of, well, Blakely, don't enjoy this too much. Like, this could be gone.
Yeah.
And that is a lie straight from the pits of hell.
Yeah.
That is a lie to distract us from just enjoying the gifts that God wants to bestow on our lives. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
And I'm going to share one personally too, because I just am like, it's funny how both for us, it has to do with relationships, because my grandfather passed away, I think in 2022. And I lived with my grandmother and my grandfather, like we were super, super close, and he passed away by a sudden heart attack. And it was just shattering for my Mimi, and just absolutely heartbreaking to watch the person that she loved so much then just be taken out of this world, like out of nowhere. And then like a few months later, I was getting married. I was engaged at this time. And I think that really, when I first got married, I think I've talked to you about this before, but I would like I was so thankful, and I would lay in bed and I feel like I would be so thankful that I was married, but I almost was just like, instead of like gripping it so tight, like I love this person so much and whatnot, and overly, doing this, I almost was kind of like this, like, oh, I'm so happy I had marriage, but I don't want to enjoy it too much, because what if he has a heart attack, pass away? And I know this is so morbid, but it was really something that I had to work through and realize, like, God, I have no idea how long I'll be married to chance. Like, this is just so real. Like, if you don't realize that this is real, this is life. Like, we're not promised tomorrow. But I have no idea how long I'm going to have chance, but I'm not going to let the fear of losing him keep me from celebrating the gift of a husband I have right now. Like, and that is what I've really, so anyways, I've really just experienced, and I think, for you, it might maybe has some other root or whatnot, but that's important to like bringing people into our life too. Sure. But I think this is such a good kind of a tangent, but I think I think a lot of people, needed that, and just also shows you that there are a lot of roots to different things we're feeling, and we're talking about plants. So anyways,
cheers to that.
Cheers to that. All right.
So that leads us into our next season, summer, which for me, this is my most excited season to talk about, and Maia knows this, because I feel like it is the most overlooked season. We talk so much. Everyone knows that in the winter seasons, it's just hard to follow God. I actually feel like in the summer season, it's harder for me. And what I mean by summer season is when life is just so sweet. And there's so much happening, literally like this summer where, it's in August, and I look back on the summer and it was nonstop, go, so much fun, adventure after adventure. And yes, there were hard things, but I think the epitome of a summer season is just a lot of joy and fun in regards to your circumstances. And I have found that in the summer season, it's really, you've almost gotten so far from winter that in the winter, for me, it's a lot easier to have dependency on God. It's a lot easier for me to wake up in a hard season and know that my only hope of making it through the day is turning to God.
Is abiding Him,
But when you're 2 seasons past winter and you're in summer and life is really good, you wake up and you're like, there are so many things I could turn to bring me joy today. I can turn to, just to be honest, right now I'm in such a sweet season. Lawson just moved to Florida, and work has been a lot, but it's been so amazing. And I just feel like I've, come out of a lot of more stretching seasons, and I'm really getting to just enjoy and like bask in the sunlight, so to say. And each day I've found that it can be so much harder for me to abide in God because I just don't have the desire to do so. I wake up and I'm like, oh, I want to, go outside because it's so nice. I want to go to the beach. I want to call Lawson. Like there's just so many fun things happening. And that sounds weird to say, but I think that is just a season. You know, maybe it's a season where you're getting married, or maybe it's a season where you are absolutely loving your job and you're just enjoying life and you've finally gotten adjusted to that new place you've moved to. Whatever it is, I think it can be so much harder to want to pursue God when life is good.
Oh, so good.
And I just think it's a conversation we pass over too much because we focus so much on the winter seasons and abiding in God in that season. But I do think a lot of us miss the really richness of a relationship with God in the summer because we're so distracted by everything good happening in our life. So I think in this season, what's been so crucial and game-changing for me is understanding that my lack of desire to pursue God does not need to translate to an actual lack of pursuing God. I always talk about how impactful emotions are in my life. I am very emotionally driven, and I think I mention that like every episode. But I'm just very self-aware of that. And I use the quote often, emotions are like kids. You can't let them drive the car, but you also can't put them in the trunk. Emotions have to have their proper place. And in a summer season, you might not emotionally want to pursue God. But it's in that season for me where when I wake up and it's maybe not the first thing I want to do, that I need to do it even more. And it's like with any relationship in life. For instance, if I just met Maia for the first time and I wanted to really get to know her, I wouldn't get to know her by hanging out with her once a month. Like that's probably not going to be the most beneficial thing for the growth of our relationship. If I hang out with Maia every single day and I'm spending time with her every single day, we are going to grow in relationship. I'm going to get to know her on such a deeper level and see the way her relationship impacts my life. And I think the same is with God in a summer season when you are just really distracted by the things going on around you. It might take more of an intentional effort to choose what's true over what your emotions are saying. And what's true is that when we abide in God, we will see the fruit of that in our life. So yeah, I think that is my biggest tip, is just being aware of maybe your lack of desire in those seasons and pursuing God amidst those things.
I think it's so interesting that, you know, such a good season, you know, the enemy can still use to kind of like distract us. And I've seen it time and time again. And I think I'll kind of get to my point here in a second, but it's so interesting that the enemy in such a good season tries to distract us and whatnot, because in the summer season, so much growth can happen. And that's actually when, if you look at plants, it's so fascinating. That's when a lot of seeds are being made and a lot of seeds are being like prepared for like the winter and just different things. And so interesting that even during the summer season, you know, we can kind of get distracted by all the goodness. And I'll kind of explain what I mean here. And I've been life coaching, which has been so awesome. I finally got to launch that, and it has been so cool. And one thing that I've really noticed is that as we believe that like we can do something, and as we believe kind of that we are like self-sufficient, we start to lose dependency on God. It's like when things are going good, and we actually don't realize that things are so beautiful and they're blooming because of the Lord, because He has made them bloom, because He has brought us, you know, brought you Lawson, because He has brought, you know, me Chance, like all these different things. Like we don't realize that actual summer season that we're in is all the direct correlation of God, like by direct causation of the Lord and like His hand. And I think that rather than kind of like enjoying it and kind of having that same mindset in spring, we kind of get into it. We're like, oh yeah, I did this, you know, like I worked hard on my relationship, or I worked hard at work, you know, like these different things. And we kind of forget that, oh my gosh, this is all a gift from the Lord. And I have seen that so much, and as I've been coaching, it's really opened my eyes that as we begin to think like, oh, we're self-sufficient, we lose that dependency on God. And whenever we do that, we kind of stop, like, you know, before we realize it, you know, the things that we used to pray before we did, we're like, oh, I can do that now, you know, like, oh, it's been going so good, like I know how to do this, you know. And something that I've really learned, and like just like a practical tip for this season, is because I even think about this myself before I go into my life coaching calls. I'm like in the season of I sit and I'm praying. I'm like, God, I need your help. I think about how easy it's been as I've had really great calls to just be like, okay, I've got this. I don't need to pray. I don't need to, but it's like, no, like it's been so beautiful and I've seen such a summer bloom because of my dependency on God, and because of how good he is. And so anyways, I would say my biggest like abiding tip that I've learned is one, like recognizing that like all these summer blooms, like all of it comes from the Lord, and like that gratitude, your abiding might look a little different where you're not like fighting in scripture every day for like the strength to move forward, but instead you might be just in like taking one verse and just singing it, throughout your day. Like it just might look a little different. But I would say the biggest abiding tip, I keep on trying to say it, but then I get sidetracked, then I just forgot it. The biggest abiding tip I have is remembering your dependency on God, remembering who he is. And one way to do that I have kind of found just practically in my life is I'll kind of carve out this dependency time before I do things. Like before our podcast, we are dependent on God. We've had great podcasts in the past. It's so easy to be like, oh, we know what we're doing, let's just get into it. No, we carve out this time to pray beforehand, and then whatever it comes to with life coaching, like every single call, I'm like, okay, God, I need you. So it's like I'm carving out that time, 15 to 20 minutes of like just dependency time. And even as they're going good, it's like that will be something that I always have. And so anyways, I just encourage you, if you're somebody in like a summer season right now, carving out like this little 10-15 minutes of like dependency time, of just where you're like, God, where you're recognizing, God, I'm about to going into work and it's such a blessing, but I know that like this comes from you. Like help me to still be dependent on you. I think has just been something that has made me really realize too that like it is him, and not for me, not to get a prideful heart and take credit for all the good that's going on in the summer season. But I completely agree. As summer goes on and blooms are happening, it's so easy to kind of lose that dependency. It's almost harder to abide because of, like you said, because you have so many other beautiful things going on. And I think that the enemy tries to do that because he's trying to distract us from all the growth that's continuing to happen and all the seeds that can continue to be planted, because he knows that season is so beautiful and such an important season for the rest of the ways that we're walking through.
So good. It's hard to cultivate desperation for God when life is really good. It can be really hard. But that leads us to our last and final season.
Oh my gosh, yes.
What's the last season, Maya?
It is fall. It is fall. And I mentioned this earlier, but I want to just bring this up again. Just because we're talking about this chronologically does not mean that it's going to happen. And I don't want you to think like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, so after winter I'm going to get this. No. It doesn't happen like that, know? But for example, now we're going to kind of talk about this fall time that is this changing time. If we look at what's starting to happen, the blooms are kind of starting to like fade away. And now you're having this season where the leaves are starting to change. It just marks in all plants really, for the most part, unless you're part of an evergreen species, but we're not going to get into that.
Okay, girl.
Sorry, that one made me laugh. I had to say it. Anyways, but all these plants are going through this kind of like transition period. And so for us, it's maybe you're going through a transition period and you're going through a time where you've moved. You're going through a time where you're transitioning from being, in a relationship to single. You're just kind of going through just this changing time. And we're going to kind of talk about how to abide when things around you are all changing, your circumstances are changing. How do you kind of do that in your own life?
I think this one for me is really short and to the point. Change is not bad. It's just uncomfortable. I think that when I say that, I think of post-grad. There is often such a stigma around post-grad just being really, really horrible. And yes, post-grad can be really, really hard. I mean, I had so many days where I would just cry and cry and cry. But those tears were not necessarily from my circumstances being bad. It was just the uncomfort of being in a new season. We've both moved a ton of times. Moving can be really hard and it's uncomfortable, and making new community, making new friends, there's loneliness that comes with that. But looking back, none of those moves were bad things in my life. They were just really uncomfortable things. And so I think with any season of change, just understanding that the discomfort does not mean that what's changing is bad.
Yeah, that's so good. Love it.
That's all I have to say.
I would say I'm just gonna mic drop what Blakely said, and then I'm gonna add. I'm gonna pick up the mic and I'm gonna say one more thing, and I'm gonna say bring all those emotions during the change to the Lord. Because I think sometimes in those changing seasons and like in that fall season where things are happening, we're processing a lot of emotions. Usually, like you said, you're processing. It's not that what was happening was bad. Sometimes what's happening might not be bad. Sometimes it might feel like it was bad. But I think we have this tendency to, in the fall season, in the transitions, to kind of maybe suppress those emotions or bring them a lot to other people rather than bringing them to the Lord and remembering that He knows every thought that you're thinking. Psalm 139, He knows every single one of your days coming out. Like, He knows your life, and He delights in whenever we bring those things to Him. One of the most just life-changing moments, and I talked about it on one of the past podcasts, but was when I actually brought my emotions and I wrote my feelings, how I was feeling, all these things that the Lord already knew. But when I was writing them out, I was realizing like, wow, like He knows these and I'm not alone. And it was just such a beautiful thing to realize that I could bring all my emotions to God. And so if you're in a season of change, I would really, if you're looking to abide, I would say the tip for me is really bringing all those emotions to the Lord, because I think change just naturally stirs up so many different emotions. Totally. And so I would say bringing those things to the Lord, and on top of that, giving yourself grace to feel those things. I think, kind of like Blakely said, if you just put them in the trunk, if you just put those emotions in the trunk, then you're going to be carrying them all throughout this season. So bring them to the Lord, so that way you're able to really process through them, wrestle through them if you need to, and give yourself grace during that time, I think was really, really good. Even when I think about when I move places, and that first few days, because my husband and I move all the time, and I've really learned to give myself a grace day, where it's when I first move, I give myself this, let myself feel the emotion, let myself feel upset if I don't really like where we're at or whatever it is, and then that way I'm I've actually dealt with this, and I've given myself my grace day, and now I can go in, and I might have those little emotions come back up, but I know, okay, I remember the truth I learned from my grace day. So I would say that's kind of a good way to end talking about fall.
So good.
And so, I think that kind of ends off on our seasons that we were going to talk about today. If there are more things that you kind of want us to address, or you have more questions about this, or you're hey, it'd be really cool if you answered about this question in winter, please send it to us. There is no greater joy than actually getting to just actually know that what we're talking about is giving you truth in your life and actually meeting you where you're at. And that's what we want to do. We want to meet you where you're at. And so we are just so thankful for anyone who is following, anyone who is, I don't even know why you subscribe to us. I don't know why you watch. I don't know why you follow anything on Instagram, or it is just the greatest joy and such a gift. And so I just want you guys to hear that. I know both of us do. And so just thank you so much for tuning in to the Overflow podcast, Overflow the podcast, I should say.
Get it right.
I hope that you have such a great just rest of whatever day you're in, whatever season you're in, and I hope that you take comfort in knowing that there is a season for everything, Ecclesiastes 3:1, and that there's you have the ability to abide in the Lord who is good in all of these seasons. So I hope that this just helped just encourage you, and if you have any tips that you really enjoyed, please feel free to leave us a little comment. I love seeing your comments. I need to respond to the one about what Bible we have, because I saw that the other day, and I just love that people were actually commenting. That's awesome, because it makes us feel like we're really talking and communicating. So anyways, I love you guys. Blakely loves you guys.
Mwah.
Have a great rest of your day. Bye, y'all.